Okay, so before we begin coloring with some highlighters, I just wanted to show you a page from my book. This is my first book, Doodle Blooms, that I did, which was the very first exploration I did with coloring and highlighters. So taking a studying supply and turning it into an art supply. This is done with highlighters, like all kinds of highlighters. And I'm going to see if I can make this come close to the camera. Every single patchwork before I decided to add a variety of things. So we're talking like there's some gel pen in here as well, but this is all done in colored pencil. But before I did that, I laid down layers of highlighters. So this one, I believe I laid down a layer of yellow over here. This was, I believe, might have also been yellow, purple, definitely was purple here, a green highlighter, pink, I think I have a blue, yep, blue, and orange. And I just love how this came out. When I showed it to the coloring class that I was leading on this, they're like, oh, you need to frame that. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty proud of how this turned out. And I did this page, gosh, I want to say, God, I think it's probably been about 5 years, and I haven't seen any kind of deterioration of its appearance. This is what it looked like when I finished it, and that's what it looks like now, which I think is pretty cool. Let me put this away. But one of the reasons I like using highlighters is it gives you a different framework, or I guess landscape, I should say. Pull my chair up here. Trusty drawing glasses so I can see what I'm doing. Let me switch those up. This is my Feminism is for Everyone title page that I was doing for the feminist raffle, along with, it was the Facebook Live coloring group that selected all of these different, mostly jewel tone, you'll see, but we've got this yellow in here. So this is as far as I've gone, and I've been strictly using colored pencils. Mostly Faber-Castell, but one, excuse me, Prismacolor, because it's the only chartreuse that I have, true chartreuse that I have. But I'm going to set colored pencils aside because I want to explore, I have a frog in my throat today. I want to explore using yellow highlighters with this, because here's yellow. And, you know, this is a fun palette, but it's also a little bit limiting once you get to a page that's this dynamic, where you have letters and you have patterns that kind of are the same but also have a variation. You have development out, you have development in, and quite frankly, this is not enough colors really for me to do as much play as I'd like. So by adding the yellow highlighter, I'm going to create different shades of all these colors. Where I think I'm going to do it, I'm kind of nervous about it, but you're learning with me or you're coloring with me. So we'll just see where this goes. I'm going to be coloring in kind of, I see these as like the bullseye lanes of this design that I created, this illustration. I like having both the fat Sharpie and the thin Sharpie because one, this one covers a lot faster. Two, this one's going to get you into those fine nooks and crannies if you are concerned about staying within the lines. I am going to, oh, there we go, lower my chair. And hopefully I don't bump the camera with my head, but you'll see it's actually really fun to do Sharpie on your coloring pages as well, because it's very, for lack of a better word, it's kind of therapeutic. Like I'm almost thinking, you know what, y'all? I think all right, let's say, screw the lines. I'm just going to color right over them. And I do get frustrated when I color on camera. Not so much because I'm like, ooh, I've got to be perfect for everybody, because otherwise, why would I be the person that you're watching the video of? And that's ridiculous. It's mostly because I have a hard time seeing with my lights so that you guys can see. And then with this silly camera hanging over my head, I find it really hard to get a good angle when my glasses actually are showing me a true version of what I'm supposed to see. So This may turn out to be an absolute mess. It may also turn into something amazing, which is why I like to try new and different things with my coloring pages. There's no rule about what you can and cannot color with. Now, if you're watching, I don't know if this is coming up on camera, but my paper's starting to buckle. So, let's see, I'm gonna make sure I'm zooming in for you. But it's getting, because it's so wet, and you can even see, and at least I can, there's moisture still, and I colored that part first. So the reason why we first color and then let this coloring page set aside and cure, I call it curing. I don't know if it's necessarily an accurate term. It's what I like to think about. When I do my pages with highlighter or other wet media, and then mix it up with some dry media like colored pencils, you want to make sure that you do all this kind of willy-nilly filling in, like almost feel like you're using a giant paintbrush, and there's no rules. You're just filling in the space. You want to then set this aside. I typically, if I'm going to color with markers like this, juicy ones, so new Sharpie highlighters, and these ones are, I keep a very special box of highlighters. These are not new in the sense of I just purchased them yesterday. They're new in the sense of I only use them for coloring, and I don't use Sharpies all the time. Or excuse me, I don't use highlighters all the time in my coloring. I just use it when I feel like it. But I don't use these highlighters on anything else but coloring, so they don't get used very often. So they're always really, really juicy. And you can see like it's bopping up now where it was a flat page before. You want to set this aside at least we're talking bare minimum of 24 hours. And I call it curing because when you wet paper like this is just regular copy paper and not even a good brand or fiber count, or should I say poundage count, GSM. This is just standard old copy paper, and it's not designed to get wet. And when it gets wet, the fibers of the paper, the tooth of the paper begins to pull apart, to disintegrate. Sometimes if I was to take watercolor to this, or watercolor with a brush or a stiff brush, it would not only buckle, but it would also begin to pill and make holes. So it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing or a wrong thing. I don't like I always say, there are no mistakes in coloring. There's no wrong way to color. It's just that, in all likelihood, most people don't color with the goal of tearing their page. So if you don't want to tear your page, you have to follow a couple of rules. They're not really limiting rules. They're just all about the physics of the materials you're working with. And most coloring books are not designed to receive wet media. And a Sharpie like this, or a big marker, or if you're using Copics, which are a fancy alcohol marker or anything like that, a wet media marker, the paper that you're coloring on is not designed to receive that much moisture. It's designed for colored pencils. It's designed for, at the most, gel pens. And even gel pens can make some papers buckle and have their fibers begin to kind of scream out in terror, like, no, why are you getting me wet? Like the Wicked Witch of the West, I'm melting. So you wait at least 24 hours, and I call it the curing process, because while these fibers are getting pulled apart by all this media, this wet media, they'll pull back together if you give them some time. So they will come and become a regular piece of paper again, but now with this layer of pigment on top. So sometimes it even makes them, I don't want to say it makes it stronger because I've never studied the physics of it, but it feels like it does when you're coloring back on top of it. So I'm going to color this today, this page, with all of this fluorescent yellow, but I'm going to come back to it either tomorrow or the next day after, well, let's see, I'm coloring in the afternoon today, so I might wait until another day after it's had a chance to really set and cure and let those fibers pull back together. because if I didn't, and I tried to come out, like this is beginning to get dry. Oh, it still even feels moist. If I didn't, I would be bringing colored pencils to the page and it would rip. And just that's it. Even if it wasn't a very sharp point to my colored pencil. And I'm rotating, so if you're not having this with the sounds on, I can't imagine this is a very interesting video, but I'll try my very best to kind of put some highlights in some pop-up on this video when I finally finish producing it. But it's, see, this is liberating, y'all. This is liberating to just take your pen and go over the lines. And I even drew these lines. So should it be that liberating for me since I put them up? I mean, lines can seem bossy no matter what. It's really fun to just color over them. So I'm going to remind you one more time that, you know, if you're using markers like this, where you're just going to go over a page and then it's becoming a new canvas color on which to work, you want to wait at least a good 24 hours, letting that ink really dry, curing. Ooh, I still got colored pencil there. Letting it cure before you come back again with colored pencils or, ooh, yep, that's what I wanted to do, or gel pens or whatever other media you were going to come back at it with. You could even come back at this with watercolor, but you would, again, want to wait at least 24 hours, especially with watercolor, because you're coming back at it with another bit of wet media. And that's enough talking for me right now when I'm just here coloring. I'm going to speed this up, and I will come back and visit with you when I begin putting some colored pencil on this feminist coloring page. Before revealing my finished coloring page, I thought I'd show you the color transition that happens when you color over a layer of highlighter with colored pencils. That top layer is just colored pencil on copy paper. This is the exact same stock of copy paper that I use to print out my feminist coloring page. And then I'm coloring in a firm, then light, then medium pressure hand on top of it. And you'll see it creates this really fun tints and shades of color. So we took 9 colored pencils and we turned them into 18 by laying down a large swath of the page that's under here with yellow highlighter, creating a much more diverse palette, but that's also harmonious because these are the same colors. They've just been slightly tweaked with this kind of a filter underneath that is the yellow highlighter. So let's see how it turned out. Move this aside. Now you might recall there is some straight up just colored pencil. That's right here. The flowers, I did those in just regular colored pencil, and I'll let you take a closer look in just a second. And then these ribbons, these bands of color, those are just colored pencil. But let's get a little bit closer so we can see all of these areas, like what I like to call the bullseye, and these lines here. That's all done with yellow highlighter, and I kept some yellow highlighter in just so I could remember that that's what I did with this page. Have been now colored over with colored pencil. I didn't video that because that's a lot of watching me color, but you'll see I chose a variety of different colors. I'm going to bring this closer to y'all. Let's do it this way. So one of my favorites was, this is the turquoise. I did this in a light shade and it really glows, and it makes the darker pencil, the pencil that's on by itself, kind of pop where it didn't before. I wish I could show you what I did before without the highlighter, but that's a lot of coloring, more time than I have. I really enjoy the depth that comes with coloring over this kind of, like I said before, it glows. And I'll bring it even closer and we'll go a little bit slower so you can get a nice look. This is with under, so I've got natural lit daylight today. This is what this looks like in just using sunlight to let you all see what the finished page looks like. I think coloring with highlighters is super cool because I had to think about it. Like, I created this chart of colors for you guys to see so that it made it clear, like, oh wow, this changes to this. But I didn't color that way. I colored after you saw me finish, basically I call it bathing this page in yellow highlighter. I had my pencils and I was just kind of visualizing, playing around with, okay, if I start taking this, what did they call this, magenta, and I apply it, what's it going to look like? And I kind of had to toy around with it. And it turns into this kind of a deep pomegranate, purpley red color. And I just had to kind of let my mind engage more deeply in the page, having to think about what this color was going to do to all of these when I was doing this illustration, I was coloring this page. I think that's super fun. A cool thing to think about is, what would it be like if you didn't just use one highlighter color? What if you had an orange highlighter, or purple highlighter, a green highlighter, or a blue highlighter? Those are the common colors. Play around with this idea and see what happens for you. You might just create some ultra glowing coloring art magic.